Hello, this is Melissa Mari, and this is Living Gold, and this is my program here to share with you a life story through the aspect of the sacred. And I am very blessed today to have a mentor and a teacher who's very important to both Colin and I. And this is C. Michael Smith, and he's also known to all of us as Mikkal. And he's the author of Jung and Shamanism in Dialogue. And this is an incredible book that he wrote 34 years ago. He also wrote an award-winning book, Psychotherapy and the Sacred. He's a clinical and analytical psychologist, also a medical anthropologist, and he was editor of 8 volumes of the Shamanic Applications Review. And he has founded Crow's Nest Center for Shamanic Studies International, and there's teaching and learning communities in Michigan, in France, and in Belgium. And I'm going to have his full bio in the show notes. And I am so blessed to have him today to share his sacred life journey with us. So thank you, Mikkal, so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. And it's great to be here and be a part of your show, your program.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So my first question, and I ask this to all my guests, is what was your first memory that was important, that had this sacred feeling to it that you can remember?
The sacred feeling. Well, that's an interesting question for me because my first memory is actually having no memory, but that's a memory. And I have tried to figure out how old I was. I had to be younger than 5, so I might have been 3 or 4. And I'm in I think it was a playpen because there were like bars on the bed. Maybe it was a baby bed from the 1950s. I don't know, because they often had these sides you could lift up, and they were like little cage bars, to keep the baby from falling out of bed. But that's where I was, and I'm holding on to these things. And I'm hearing my mother and father talk in another room. Mm. And I think they were listening to President Ike Eisenhower on the television. That's probably an inference about the memory, but I remember the voices in my imagination anyway. That's what it sounded like. They were listening to some type of political speech. But I had a sense of being all alone and so separate from them. And at some point I cried out. But while I'm pondering the situation, hearing their voices, I remember feeling, this is weird. How did I get here? I don't remember anything. But here I am. And I know those are my people. And then I was lonely. But in that moment where I had no sense of time, and I was curious how I got here, it felt as if I had always been. And I was, looking back on it retrospectively, I was in a human form, but the sense was I've always been conscious, awake in some sense, or present in some sense somewhere. So why am I in this strange environment, with these bars holding me back and separating me from my parents? So it turns out that is a core mystical experience right there from a very early age, of emptiness. It's kind of contentless, that sense that I am, and I'm in a room. And those are things we add to it through perception, but it was simply the sense of being,
Right. And then it's interesting with the bars being there, but this sense of self and pure consciousness
Yeah.
with the bar. So yes, that is very, very interesting, and I could I could feel I could feel that sense of the longing and the connection at the same time. So, I your childhood and youth was very interesting because your father was a pastor, right?
Right.
And do you want to talk a little bit about your childhood and how that led to what it is that you're doing now?
Yeah. Give me just a second because I was thinking of saying something more about that experience. Yeah. I'll say it. Um, so the experience was one of being here and raised. My father was a Southern Baptist minister who thought that was too conservative, so he went to a conservative Baptist union denomination. Uh, but before that, I just had this numinous experience of sheer being, and I was present, utterly present in that room, which seemed like a strange environment. And once I got clear of the fundamentalist Christian conditioning that my father had put on me as I was growing up, I returned to that experience um, over and over again. Some mystics call it the ground of being.
Mm,
Some call it the fertile void, because there's no content for your consciousness. You are just conscious, and then you perceive things, and so content comes in. But that comes back to me now. I'm in the end of my 74th year, and I had some friends discussing the meaning of life, and when I was raised in that early fundamentalist Christian environment, the meaning of life was Christ died for your sins, and you should believe in him, and you become a Christian soldier, and that's the meaning: to serve Christ and to save the world. And this was one of these churches where you went and knocked on doors as members of the community and tried to
mm,
invite people to church and this sort of thing. And later, I rejected that form of religious experience. I had to, but the form itself I found kind of unnatural and depressing for myself, and filled with lots of rules that suppress the joy in living. And
mm,
well, my father was very successful as a pastor, large churches and public influences, and helped found a university and a television station and all that. He was well known in a big city, but there was something about it that makes me think he was not a very happy man. He was a frustrated man because of the heavy uh, religious conditioning that he had and was living under. It was one that didn't allow direct experience, didn't allow you to follow your predilections and joy in life. It entailed suffering, meaningful suffering, but suffering and service to Christ. In and of themselves, these are not negative values, but for me, it made me very unhappy. And also, I was a smart kid, so I was questioning this with my father as I was getting older and older, from childhood on up through teens and into my 20s. And he would get very angry
mm. Yeah, that's
uh,
tough.
because at a certain point, it was really my 20s, I could outthink him. He had a doctorate in theology, but I could outthink him. So when I would push him into a box, I really wanted answers that made sense to me. It didn't make sense. And I just could not believe my next door neighbors were going to hell because they're not a member of our church. But that was what my father was teaching. you know,
Right. Yeah. So So what made you, because you did go to school and you were an ordained minister yourself. So what made you go in the same direction as your father?
Well, of course, this is the environment I'm being conditioned in.
Right.
And so I didn't know what to believe, but I wanted answers. And the ones that was getting weren't making sense. But
Mm-hmm.
I did feel, after a period of, I was a hippie for a while in my teen years and ran off to San Francisco Bay Area,
Oh,
with
wow.
the love ends and all, all that,
Was
Also did
that
Los Angeles.
was that
Yep.
in your teens, or was that a little later than that?
That was at 18 and 19. Yep. I went
So,
twice and stayed out there a long time. Yep.
wow. So that must have opened up a whole bunch of stuff for you.
Oh, it did. And I was doing LSD and anything else we could
Mm-hmm.
get, and these love-ins were about, it had a political aspect, like don't trust authority.
Right.
These old values are suppressive. Um, uh, Love one another, be kind to one another, make love, not war. And there was always, if you could find sex going on in these love-ins, there'd be 10,000 people in a city park, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and some people would be getting it on. It was
Wow.
complete reversal of the world I was raised in, if you
Yes,
follow me.
yes,
But I
yes.
think that's significant because I went
Mm-hmm.
back. I had even more questions, and my father just could not tolerate my questions. So I decided to go to a theological seminary. It's a liberal one. Um, and he'd also gone to that seminary himself and refused to open his mind. But I was going to go there and read everything he told me not to read. I read
Right.
Darwin, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I read the philosopher Whitehead, who was a quantum theorist and mathematician. Um, I read Heidegger and Paul Tillich and these mystically oriented existential thinkers. And I gave it a whole year. I said, I'm just going to keep my mind open and see what other people say about life. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the year, I thought, I'm going to close the door on this religion of my father because this other stuff is making a lot more sense to me. And I even read
Mm.
Jean-Paul Sartre, who said
Right.
there is no meaning,
Yeah.
it's there, but there's freedom, do what you want.
Uh-huh.
But this spoke to me in some way because I wanted to follow my interests, my predilections, the things that give me
Mm-hmm.
joy. Why would you
Mm-hmm.
want to follow a way of life that makes you miserable or suffer? You know. And little did I know, but this reclaiming of my joy was key to my being here. And at
Mm-hmm.
74, I can say I'm finally here. I don't know how long I've been here in a sustainable way. It's been a while, but it's not easy to be here. And if you ask me what the purpose of life is or the meaning of life, the short version would be to be here. And I do not find many people to be here. They are here in some form, adapting, fitting in,
Mm-hmm.
uh, living by the values like I was that were given to them by their parents or society. The matrix, the whole thing where it's externalized value, outside authority telling you what to do, and you just do it. So that's not being here. To be
Right.
here is to be utterly authentic. Call it as you see it, express your true feelings, of course, with sensitivity and compassion and kindness and all that. But for God's sakes, don't lie, don't fake it, don't be authentic. Be what you are. Own it.
Right.
You know.
Right. Yeah. So many people do not get that even in their entire life. They don't even get that.
I know it well.
Yeah. But, so you've been able to do that.
Most people are lost in the past. It's their conditioning. So
Yeah.
it's in the memory banks, the neural networks, and
Yeah.
this sort of thing. So their brain is taken over by it. Their consciousness is just guided by the brain, and they're not really inquiring or keeping open and
Right.
reflecting, let alone discovering what they really want.
Yeah. So after you were in the seminary, then how did you get into psychology and Jung and studying
Okay.
that?
All right. All right. So I should say that, yeah, I got ordained as a Church of Christ, Disciple of Christ preacher, and later left that for the Episcopal Church and reordained there as an Episcopal priest. And shortly after that, left that. And I even did a stint monastically because there was something in me that is very hermit-like and solitary. And I was influenced by Thomas Merton's writings. And I thought I could do what he did, you know. But I found no, I'm a human being. I have sexuality. I'm more worldly than that. You know, I have to engage the culture in a more extroverted way than the monks do. They do it in an introverted way. You go to a monastery to get peace and find calm and a little guidance, you know. But they're introverts, so it's a very introverted way of serving the world. But I needed to be more out there in it, you know, engaging people. And I knew it had something to do with how I was already living in my late 20s and early 30s. And at age 32, I had what's called a spontaneous shamanic awakening, which is a very rare form of awakening. Most people achieve it by desire or questing for it. I had no desire for it, and I didn't go looking for it. But what happened was I was out on the streets in my neighborhood where I lived, taking walks in the hot summer evenings in Michigan. And there's street lights and the trees are fully, you know, leafed out and everything. So there's shadows and light patches everywhere. And every time we go on a walk, I'm seeing in the shadows what takes the form of a giant thunderbird with its wings spreading everywhere, you know. And we took many, many such walks. And finally, one night I commented on it, you know, and she goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You don't see those wings?" She goes, "No." I thought,
Was this your wife or a
Yeah,
girlfriend? Oh,
that
okay.
was my wife. Yep. Yep. And so after that, I thought, this is a little weird. And some nights I'd sit on my porch and stare at this tree. There's a giant oak tree in the middle of a big yard. It was huge, and it had a spotlight behind it, and so the tree was lit up. And if I stared at that long enough, it became a giant serpentine enwrapped tree, kind of like a magic tree or tree of life, you know. And later I ran into a friend of mine, Tom Topash, who was a school principal, but he was also the tribal president, the modern term for chief of the Potawatomi band, Pokagon band, Potawatomi Indians. And he said, you know, my grandfather had a vision like that. He was a shaman. And that got my attention, the word, and I knew something about it, but it was not a very well-known word at that time. And the visionary activity kicked up after that because it was like a confirmation or something, and I don't know. One day I'm driving to work from my home in Deweysack to Niles, Michigan. It's 20 miles, 25, 30-minute drive.
What were you doing for work at that point?
Well, at that, I'm a little out of sync, but I want to finish that. But I was I was doing psychotherapy at that point. I had left the church, but only recently. It's like 2 years out from that, and I was doing psychotherapy. At that time, under the shield of a pastoral counselor, because I was ordained. I didn't yet have the psychologist license, but I would go in that direction. But okay, so I'm driving to the office one day on this highway. It's 60, 65 miles an hour, you know, straight shoot to Niles. And the road just opens up. It explodes, and my car dives into a big chasm.
Whoa.
And I'm seeing all kinds of, in living color, numinous beings. And I'm utterly fascinated. And it was all I could do to remind myself that I'm driving the car at high speed and I need to stop this, you know. And by an act of will, pulled myself out of it, drove back home, told my wife what happened. She goes, "Okay, you need to talk to somebody."
Mm.
And she said, do not go to a psychiatrist because, they're going to put you on a medication, suppressive medication. She goes, once you get back in Jungian analysis, and I'd been in Jungian analysis before with Helen Lucan, I found this other guy, Tom Kapuscinskis, and I went to see him, and it took 2 sessions, but when I explained the whole phenomena that was going on, he goes, oh, wow, this is not so much analytic work that's needed. You need to find a mentor, and he said that like a shamanic healer that could initiate me or guide me in the process,
Mm.
So it turned out that Tom Kapuscinskis was part of an indigenous type vision quest up on Lake Temagami. It's up in northern Canada near the Hudson Bay. And I went up there for 2 weeks
Mm.
and fasted for 4 days and 4 nights, out in the wilderness on my own island. There's many islands in the Hudson Bay area, Lake Temagami. And in that vision quest, I saw clearly what the calling was. And
Mm.
I said, I'm sitting on a rock naked for these 4 days and 4 nights. And I say, how do I offer this to the world? Nobody's going to understand what I'm even talking about. And I had this vision of the University of Chicago and me going there to get a
Mm.
doctorate in psychology and also hooking up with this man named Mircea Eliade, who had written a definitive, the world's first definitive scholarly book on shamanism. And so I contacted him, and he invited me in, and I sat for the exams and stuff, and
Wow.
I did 2 doctorates at once, but I did both, and I also went to the Jung Institute while I'm doing this because
Wow.
I had this clarity on the vision quest that Jungian psychology could give me a framework,
Mm-hmm.
a shingle that Papa could recognize, although at that time Jung wasn't that well known
Mm-hmm.
either. But I knew who he was, and I knew there are people that knew who he was, and maybe they would come to me, seek my services, that sort of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I did with resolute focus. In 3 years, I pulled off
Wow.
two doctorates and a diploma from the Jung Institute of Chicago. And
Amazing.
so I set up this vehicle
Mm.
for me to practice the life I wanted to practice in terms of offering my gifts to the world.
Mm.
But then I really needed more initiation in shamanic practice. I specialized in medical anthropology with one of the doctorates, and shamanology in particular, which is the study of indigenous healing systems known as shamanism across
Mm-hmm.
cultures. And to date, I have my membership in the Circle de Sagesse in Paris. I have probably worked with more indigenous shamans than almost anyone on the planet.
Mm.
152 from 85 different cultures just through the Circle de Sagesse.
Mm.
And my years in Ecuador and in Peru, and then my work in South Africa extended that considerably. Also, North American influences and Mexican teachers. So the enormous experience over the course of my life with that, to ground and learn from and not identify as a shaman. I started out doing that and I stopped it because it's not really this culture's word for what I'm doing. There's no word for it, but I just say I'm a shamanist, like some people say they're a Buddhist, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But the archetypal structure of what I'm doing is virtually identical to what Amerindian shamans say, Lakota, or Mexican curandera in the region of Veracruz or Oaxaca, in Mexico would do, or in the depths of the jungle or in the heights of the Andes. The structural form is so much the same. And when you're called like that, you have to live it, and your joy, your predilections all go into that mix to open up that, so that you don't have much of a choice. It's
Mm.
either that or go nuts or get sick, but it brings out the best in you.
Yeah. Now,
Go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Can I ask you? So, what would you give someone from the West who hasn't found in an indigenous shaman that takes them on as an apprentice, but somebody from the West who sounds like that they would have that kind of a natural calling? Is this why you wrote the book Jung and Shamanism, to find that to explore and to communicate that connection? Because I find that a lot of younger people, including and myself, grew up with that, all the signs that says that you are shaman or from that stock, but were not given in whatever way the experience of having a shaman say, you are my apprentice, or you know what I'm saying? It's like,
First of all, to answer your question, yes, I wrote Jung and Shamanism to create a bridge. I thought the culture needed it, but I needed it. I needed a platform to explain what I'm doing and why it's important and what the power of it is. And I needed to translate it into modern Western cultural terms. So I'm taking shamanism, the whole field of it, in a planetary sense, the whole field of shamanism, turning that into a metaphoric person and putting that in conversation with Jung and his way of practicing healing. So I'm building that bridge there so that psychotherapists who want to, they feel the same kind of calling or urge, have something, that they can ground what they're doing in their own culture and not seek to be a Lakota medicine woman or whatever, but don't appropriate, but learn how to take the archetypal essence of the shamanic phenomena or shamanist phenomena that's happening to you and maybe ground it with psychotherapy or some of the arts. There are musicians, and you're one, and Colin one. Shamanism was the home of all the arts originally. It was a shaman. It was creating, dancing, doing drama, displaying everything, painting drums, making totem poles, and on it went. So the root of the arts are in shamanism, and you can see that all the way back to the caves of Chauvet and so on. But since the period of the evolution of civilization and particularly modernity, all the arts that went with shamanism have become specialized in their own domains, and it's very rich and all that. But I find creative types that are in the arts, a lot of them are inspired to have shamanistic experiences, and their field of service is not psychotherapy like mine is. It's through their art forms, and through music, and just think of that song, Nothing Else Matters, the group. I can't think of the metal group.
Metallica.
Metallica. But there are lots of songs like that, that just really pull you in and get you to think about your own soul and your life and the quality of it. Is it what you really want, and so on,
Right.
There are lots of musicians doing that sort of thing, A lot of them are singing love songs too, and anti-protest songs, and so on. But it's this desire to reach out and change the world, and benefit the community through the art form that has shamanistic roots. So
right. So
I'm not sure I answered your question though. There was another
yeah,
piece.
no, I mean, yeah. what I've found is that for a lot of us who had parents that could not understand these deeper parts of us, that, basically get in the matrix, find a real job, that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't pursue, your what's coming from your heart, from your big S self. Just go out there, get a job, a real job, and so I think you answered that.
Yeah.
That the most important thing, and I know you do this through your work, is to connect people back to their biggest self, to that heart place, to the place where they're able to fully manifest in their life this calling. But I do want to get back to your personal story, because I think it's really important. So you studied the shamanism, and basically you became an expert, in understanding the phenomenon and the cultures. But can you talk about your own growth in the work, and maybe a couple experiences of your own, maybe when you were studying in was it South America or Central America where you were studying?
It's both.
Yeah,
Mexico, Peru, Ecuador. Mm-hmm.
right.
Yeah.
Is there an experience or two that you'd like to share that shows your own progression in this work?
Let me think on that one a minute, because
Okay.
it's not a question I did a memory search on, so I'm sure something will come of it. But I'll start with my teacher, Don Alberto. He died 2 years ago during COVID, right at the tail end of
Mm,
COVID.
mm,
But so he was my teacher actively for 8 years. I had an 8-year apprenticeship with him. He's a Taita Yatric, which is the high honored recognition as a shaman and community leader among the Quechua, the Atis Quechua tribe. And he had lots of Tibetan Buddhist monks that lived on his property near Mount Cotopaxi in Ecuador. And
mm.
they exchanged knowledge, but most of them were his disciples. Don Alberto was a non-dual master. It was my first encounter with a shaman that was fully enlightened and awake.
Wow.
And that runs against the transpersonal literature. Ken Wilber said,
Mm,
well, they're kind of low-level visionaries, and that was a big evolutionary advance for humanity, but, there's no causal level or non-dual level shamans. That's a bunch of hooey. They're all over the
mm,
place, actually. So this guy, when I started working with him, um, his teachings were so simple. They were very profound, but they were simple. Like he would teach a circle. Sometimes there were 20 of us apprentices around. Sometimes it was a much larger group. But he would tell us to connect with an element. That's how it started, with earth or wind or fire or water. Each time we're together, he'd pick a particular element, and he would say, just go out and say tukui, which means it's kind of a hello. I'm putting myself in relationship to you. Tukui shunguan kuyanimi, which means with everything in my heart, I'm here, and hello. And when you do that, the essence or the ushai of the plant or the animal or the element speaks back to you. in a nonverbal way, but it begins revealing more of itself in its true nature. And so there would be times of just learning from fire, and other times for learning from wind, and so on. And then he moves from the elements to eating. A ceremony, he called these ceremonies the ceremony of eating, which is you don't talk and you don't think, you just eat. And pay attention to what you experience when you do that. So that was a big teaching. And then we had the ceremony of bathing. And this was to commune with water. The ceremony of eating was commune to Mother Earth, because we were each Mother Earth walking and talking, but we are eating her too. And she is eating us in some sense. So to feel that and to acknowledge what's going on, so you're in relationship with her. And then they call these mamas. This is the Ashpa Mama, which is Mother Earth. And then there's Yaku Mama, which is Mama Water. So you take your baths or showers, and you unplug the root chakra and you let the waters come inside too. Metaphorically speaking, you feel it, you envision it all the way down to the tips of your toes, and you plug it up, and like a washing machine, you agitate, and then you unplug like that. And water runs out, and then you fill it up.
I've done that one. It's a good one.
You fill it up with clean water, and on it goes. And the ceremony of eliminations when you go to the toilet, And on that one, I said to him, so when are we going to get into the real shamanic rituals, I'm a young, ignorant student. He says, I know what you're expecting and I know what you're wanting. He says, I think I'm going to disappoint you because my ceremonies are so natural and so simple that if you're expecting something magical or complicated, you're going to miss what it's all about. Interesting. So in ceremony of elimination, say you're having a bowel movement, you just offer that package back to Mother Earth, who recycles and processes. So everything you do, even how you arrange your bed in the direction it is in your house, every being you meet and every time and place, you connect with them, the principle of Tukui Shunguan, so that you eventually are creating a relationship with the entire world, heart open, earth honoring, loving, and respectful. What he was teaching us, what well-being is, what health looks like.
Right, I can feel that. That is incredible teaching. Yeah,
He made us all children again, young children who can feel this. We're alive. We're not yet suppressed. That stage, Yeah, and so he's teaching us the goal first before he taught us about how to heal. So this is like a wellness teaching too, as well. This is the aim. This is where we're all supposed to be. Through that is incredibly powerful.
Yes.
Teaching. And of course, then he had many teachings for healing and the limitations on healing, this sort of thing, and teachings on death. He would claim, there is no death really. When my body goes, I just am losing this presentation.
Right.
Yeah. And there will be another is implied in that, but this presentation goes. Yeah.
That's really powerful. I can feel it, and because I've done work with you, I can see how you've used his teaching in your work, and it's incredibly effective and so simple. That's the thing, is that there's too much complications in the West, as far as doing the work, so to speak, because it's all this mind stuff, right?
Right.
And it's definitely so simple.
It is. You and I were doing the parts work,
Right. Yeah, I wanted to get into that. Yeah. So that definitely leads us more into how you've established your own work and also the workshops that you do with Crow's Nest and in other areas. I know that you've done different workshops with different
Well,
groups.
first, I want to finish that last piece because we did work with your parts, right? And there's an unburdening process, and the elements become important to that. Now, a lot of
Right.
people don't know this, but in Schwartz's first book, public introduction, popular introduction to IFS, he
Internal family systems, for people who don't know what that stands for.
yeah he mentions me in my book as a resource on that, and he also tapped into Sandra Ingerman, who also has a similar relationship to the elements. So that comes out of shamanism, that part in IFS. In fact, the whole protocol you'll find in shamanism. So it's far more ancient than IFS. But, and, you know, Falconer in his book last year on, I forget what it was titled, The Other World or something like that, talking about UBs or unattached burdens, also cited my work as having been rich and interesting for the field. So this point of that is that one of the first objectives I had in creating my life was to enrich my own culture by creating some platform where we could resurrect or reactivate the shamanic potentials in ourselves and the shamanic wisdom that we have within us if we know how to activate it. So the books, the writings, the journals, the lectures all over the world, all that is important to get that message out in modern Western civilization. Okay.
Yes. So, what?
Well, let's go back to your question. I didn't get to
Yeah.
it,
Okay.
so I just want to finish that piece. But I mentioned
Okay.
parts work, and so you had a question about that. Do you recall?
I'm just wanting to connect. So all your work with the shamanism, and I do understand now that that this parts work and referenced actually your work, so that they were looking at a little bit of shamanism, but the way that you use parts work and getting people to explore the Jungian big S self, and the way that you approach what Jung calls the complexes, or we call the parts, is completely, I feel like it's completely your own. And so I think I just want you, if you can, from a personal perspective of how you put all this together. How are you able to create this? It almost seems like what we would call in the West a program, so to speak, but it's completely unique in your own.
Yeah. Okay. So recently, Ayan Farvahar, who's a friend and a former apprentice, but we teach together now. He's a very wise man. He was asked a question by another friend, like, what is the basics of Mikkal's teachings? And I couldn't give a short answer on that. He just said, well, Mikkal is the teaching, meaning it's my presence, my way of being in the world, you know, and I just do that with you. But to lift it out and say exactly what it is, it's not my forte, you know. And he said, well, I found it, and Ion is an IFS therapist, certified therapist and trainer. And he's got this great intellect that's really good at abstractly pulling things out. And he goes, it's three principles. He said, center, guardian spirit, and ceremony. And that's what makes it so powerful, because he puts those three things together. So, oh, shit. it's like somebody is holding a mirror up in front of my face.
Mm-hmm.
That's the outline of my teachings right there. So living from the center is really opening your heart and letting that be the guide, because in there you have that primordial eternal wisdom, the kind of clarity I had when I was 3 or 4 years old in
Mm.
bed and felt like I'd always been. When you open to that, okay, and let it use your healthiest parts, your executive functions and so on, it just incarnates those and then helps you heal your parts. And it does it by listening to their stories, seeing what they need, finding out what they're afraid of. And so that, like the inner healer within you, which is your own heart when it's open, with curious compassion and resourcefulness of the best parts of your own mind, brings that to each part, which are usually children and adolescents that got wounded,
Mm-hmm.
and helps them and helps guide them through the healing process, a process that involves telling their story. It involves unburdening the emotional load or the belief systems, purging them. And it involves repurposing themselves, So there's like soul retrieval and there's extraction in there and this sort of thing. So I've always been practicing that. I didn't learn that from IFS. That's the shamanic way. But
Mm-hmm.
IFS has codified it and made it very simple to talk about. But they talk
Mm-hmm.
about self, and for me, self is more confusing, because what is self? There's lots of views on that. It could be the
Mm-hmm.
ego, could be parts,
Mm-hmm.
could be your personality makeup, could be the Buddha nature. What are you talking about when you say self? But if I say center,
Mm-hmm.
everybody kind of knows where that is, or the heart. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
mean the emotional heart, I mean the
Right.
spiritual heart, the spiritual center. So that's what has a desire to live, to bring its gifts to the world, uh, to be compassionate, to have a life with meaning. Uh, and it has all these transcendental resources, the transpersonal, compassion and care and creativity and connectedness and
Mm-hmm.
courage and everything you need to create your own life. you know. So that's how I
Mm-hmm.
created mine, was really through my own heart and letting it inspire, guide, and help me make choices that were in integrity with my own authenticity. So,
Um, can I
so
ask a question about the center, about finding the center for people that have trauma, or it's hard for them to feel
yeah.
that center? What would you suggest? I know it's a lot, it can be different for people, but if there's something general.
Well, if you can't find it, I think it's very important that you find someone who is centered. And I don't mean just sitting meditating, but that can be a portal to it. But they are centered in their being, and they are present. They are here, and they have some psychological resources to help you point it out. But what I do is teach people to go inside and drop their attention down into the middle of their body, the gut and the heart region, and bring to mind somebody they don't feel comfortable being around, and just pay attention to what they are sensing and feeling physically there. There's no words for it, because it's just a feeling and sensing. And I give them some space to do that. And I've done this with thousands of people. Nobody's ever not been able to do it. And then have them take a deep breath, let that go, and bring to mind somebody that they feel uncomfortable, or they feel good being around, comfortable being around. And again, put their attention in the middle of their body and notice what happens physically, viscerally, as they're contemplating that. And I have them go back and forth, take a breath, go back and forth, so they can learn. This is the heart compass. So to get there, you have to be open. To open, you have to put your attention down there. So it's a somatic experience, as well as a redirecting of your attention from the external world into the internal and into the somatic world going in. And there you can find your center, because your heart is going to tell you when you're on the plan or off the plan, meaning
Right.
your blueprint for life, your daimonic calling, your potentiality that you're meant to live. So it's going to say yes or no. And sometimes it hesitates because you need more information before you can decide. But mostly it's yes or no. And when you betray that, it's telling you not to do something and you do it. There's usually going to be some painful lesson that you have to learn. And then that brings you back onto your path if you learn from the lesson. There's a
Right.
Dostoevsky's story, Crime and Punishment, where this student, Raskolnikov, murders an old pawnbroker who's famous for being a cheat and just a horrible human. And he thinks, I'll rob her and I'll have money to go to university and I can bring my gifts to the world. And he finds out pretty quickly that was a horrible mistake that he made because he did it and now he's miserable and so on. But he's defending himself and he gets interrogated by an inspector. And he stays in denial for a long time, for weeks, And there's a point where he goes, I should have known what would happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, I did know.
Mm-hmm.
I did
Right.
know. And that was a moment of recognizing he was getting a signal from his heart compass. Don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And he did not honor it. And so he's going to have to pay the price.
Right.
That's a dramatic example, but we get that all the time. These hints from the environment that we feel somatically or intuitively, and if we go against them, we later regret them. So go with your predilections. Go with what feels right and what puts you at ease, or helps you relax, or inspires you, brings forth your passion and your potential, because that's the heart path.
Right.
In the heart guiding you, and what's guiding you. So that's the center. What's guiding you is deeper in the center or higher in the center is the daimonic level or the guardian spirit, as they call it in North America. This is your angel, your guardian angel, if you will. This is something, or your genius, what inspires your creativity, what inspires your aliveness, what gives you the hope and shows you the vision. Because we're all passing from the past and we're envisioning a future, kind of life we really want. And where does that vision come from? There's a lot of possible futures. So if you just use your intellect to decide, you can really make mistakes. But if you're listening here, you can sort out which one is most alive for you, and that means most resonant. The vibration says, "Yeah, that's it. I must have that. This is what I must be, do, and have in order to create the life I want." And if you can't feel joy in your life, and if you can't feel happy and depth of satisfaction, then your life won't have meaning. You have to feel those things. I remember Joseph Campbell talking about purpose with this guy that interviewed him for a series on PBS, Bill Moyers.
Yeah, Bill Moyers.
And Campbell surprised Moyers by saying that just sheer life itself doesn't have purpose. It's coming into being and everything, but it has potentiality. The potentiality needs to be brought forth. And what brings it forth is following your bliss. That's what he called it. That's part of Sat Chit Ananda. Ananda is the bliss, So, and he felt if you just followed that, you're in touch with the divine, or the source of inspiration, And this is true on the shamanic heart path. So it's following your predilections and the things that interest you, not because they make you money, not because they make you famous, not because of any external validation. It's because you come alive, and you won't be alive if you can't do those things or express those things or have those things, because that's what you're here for. That's how you bring your being here in the world. So these things are important. And the religion I was raised with was suppressing that. And that's what I had to break out of.
So the guardian spirit is that's your bliss. So different people.
That's your guide to your bliss and your inspiration for it. It lets you know, and it lights you up when you're in the right zone. It's like it knows beforehand what you're here for and here to do. And ceremony is the third part, and that's you make each moment ceremony because you're living from your heart, you're being compassionate, you're connecting intimately with yourself, with your parts, but also with the plants and the animals and other people, the culture, and so on. You just keep each moment, you're compressing a variety of phenomena into a work of art. Each moment and each day and in each time and place, the cycle of tiny ceremonies is indefinite. It goes on as long as you're conscious. This is the teaching of Don Alberto.
Yeah, ceremony, the way that you're describing it there, it just came to me that when we start living our life, and Colin and I were calling it living in the movie, or living your life art purpose, right? And you start seeing the connections and Jung's synchronicity, the connections between the inner center, your inner life purpose, and then the outer world and the connections and the little things. It's almost like your whole life becomes the ceremony, becomes the ritual. Yes, that's yes.
Yeah.
Yes. When we're in the flow, when we're doing this life, our life art purpose, that is when you are creating your own natural ritual, your own natural ceremony. Yeah, that's
but it's more than that too. It's like I'm creating a ceremony when I prepare my coffee in the morning.
yes, exactly.
The first thing is that I light candles and I sing chants, and I got a bunch of candles, so I love to sing, and so that just brings me joy and centers me. And then I might need to mow the lawn, so I'm going to enjoy that and make that a ceremony of beauty, and admire the beauty around me even as I'm doing it. So each thing you do should be included in this concept of ceremony, and not just doing the thing that you're specifically here to do, to bring your music or your art to the world, or your healing or your psychotherapy to the world, but make your whole life that. Then,
yes, exactly. And yeah, we just learned a lesson on this. I think it's it's part of this, is that when you're in relationship or you're working through these, the parts, that are still active and that you're still healing, and you're in relationship with another, and it could be a friend or somebody that you work with, or your loved one. And in this case, with Colin, and we've used our whole life as the alchemical vessel to learn and to grow. And I just realized that it was up to me and to him that we repurpose every moment together towards the gold, towards the light side, and not focus, because we've spent so much time doing the shadow work and focusing on the shadow, that now that we repurpose our life, create our own ceremony ritual in a positive, love, life affirming way together. And it was, it's amazing. You can just make a decision from the center, and that it's right. You just know, and then you flip just something. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be a small thing. You just flip it, and it becomes something so beautiful,
Yeah. From the center, you're much more resourceful and
Right.
perceptive.
Right.
So you're noticing things, and here's another opportunity to do ceremony in the sense that I'm talking.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we do
Yeah.
ceremony, we're really showing up and we're acknowledging the specialness of each moment,
Right.
each opportunity.
Exactly. So that's beautiful. Now, I think we're getting towards the end, and you have that you sent me that you choose words or phrases that describe the artistry of your life.
Yeah.
And I think this is really beautiful.
Well, you asked
And
you asked me to do this
right.
podcast, and I asked you what's it about, and you said it's really about how you become you. You know, how do you create your
Mm-hmm.
life, and so I just started with a practice. I often have clients do it, and they're not 74 like I am. They're more likely to be 30 or 40 or something like that. So I'm inviting them to dream. What kind of life do you want to create? Okay. But I did this with myself. I said, okay, so if I'm just saying, who am I? Well, um, not that you can really put it into words, but I can say the things I do. I do teaching and private mentoring. Uh, I work with doctoral research students, several universities. I'm a forest dweller, and I love the
Mm,
forest. I love fire ceremony. I do a lot of it. I'm a father. I love that. And a grandfather. Love that. I work in an intuitive and inspired way. I practice clinical and analytical psychology. I write poetry, lots of it, and play the piano and the guitar, and I love to sing. I write books, lectures. I write forwards and endorsements from people who are writing new books, and often beginners. I'm a cosmic lover and live with passion, and I love sobbets, which is a intimate relationship with somebody. It's a spiritual relationship. So you're open to each other and you can learn from each other and you can challenge each other. And I love that form of relationship. It's extremely powerful and intimate. And I could add a lot more to the list. But what I realized once I'd written a list was, oh, I've already actualized these things.
mm,
But when I was young, these are what I wanted to do. These were my interests and my predilections. So I'm at that stage in the life cycle where I can say, okay, I've been there, I've done that, and I'm still doing it.
mm-hmm,
And that's how I created my life. Because with
mm,
each one of those, there was an invitation to me of some possibility, and I
mm-hmm.
took it up and I said yes to it. So with an act of will, I go yes, and I'm resolved to make it happen. And then I do the work, putting it into practice to realize it.
Right.
And that's my four acts of power in a nutshell, is how
Mm-hmm.
to create the life you really want from your own center. Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And for all the people that you've helped over the years, including myself, we thank you. And as we end, I know that you're doing some workshops this summer. I'm not sure if they're all full yet, but do you want to mention those?
Yeah. So in August, here in the US, we're doing a 5-day intensive. We call it the Wounded Healer Summer School. It's really for people who are kind of on a shamanic track, psychotherapists, are a lot of them, but if you're interested in the shamanic path, you probably need to do some wounded healer work, because getting the vision, getting clear on what you want to do with your life is one thing. Once you have that, there's another core question. It's like, what's in the way? What's keeping you from it? What's going to pull you off? And those places need healing and transformation. So the summer schools, this is like 25 years, something like that. We've been doing it now every August. And our theme is the second year on this, on parts work. It's the heart path and part work. So it's how to really heal and transform from your own center. We have two IFS therapists, Ian Farber is one, Laura Gutierrez Burkett is the other. And they'll both great teachers will be joining me. So the three of us will be leading that workshop August 1 to 5th. And on our website, which is Crow's Nest Shamanism, one word, crowsnestshamanism.com. Just go to the events page and you'll find it. Should come right up.
And then you're also doing one in France too, right?
Yes, that's in the middle of September. I know I'm there for a couple of weeks. It's a week-long intensive, and that one will certainly have plenty of parts work. Uh, it'll have ancestral work, and these are advanced students in the shamanistic area, and I'm going to be teaching them how to work with medical illnesses from a shamanic perspective. Tumors and cancers, for one, diabetes and that sort of thing. How to boost the immune system, and how to reduce and shrink the cancer cells using shamanic visionary methods and working with the patient, teaching them skills to help them be their own shaman, particularly in working with cancer or pain.
Mm.
So there's a lot of interest in that. And I think our cap is like 30 people, and I think we have 4 openings there. So if anybody wants to travel to Europe, or if you speak French or English, because I'll speak in French, somebody else translates for me into French. And so they're open. We do have people that always come from Italy and Switzerland and Belgium. So it's not just French people, and sometimes Holland. So.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, and I really recommend these workshops. I know that it's not just theory. You do the ceremonies. We were blessed to that you married us, and we went to your forest, and it's an incredibly magical, beautiful place, and we did some fire ceremony, and it's just an incredible place. So
Yeah.
I really recommend it. So thank you so much, Mikkal, for sharing your story with me today and sharing, your life art and your teachings with us. I think it'll really bring some healing up in some folk, because I could feel it
Yeah,
in
good.
my heart.
I want to
Yeah.
thank you too, because mostly I'm teaching on things people need to know for certain parts of what I teach, and a lot of lectures for Jungian institutes, that sort of thing. So other people select the topic and ask me if I can address that,
Hmm.
But no, no one ever asks me to tell my story or how I got to be how I am. So that was a great question, and I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun doing it.
Oh, great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And if any of the watcher listeners here want to donate to more of this kind of podcasting, as some of you know, I've been working even deeper in my own healing, and so any kind of help, and everything will be in the show notes, and all the links to Mikkal's work and his workshops will be in the show notes. So thank you all so much for joining us today, and blessings to you, Mikkal, and to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.